setting for 3.5 in that it's fairly open. You've got these things that are kind of how the world works most of the time. They give you a sample set of gods and some basic planes. You can see kind of what kind of DM I am when I start saying you get a sample set of gods and basic planes. But it kind of starts you out, and you've got everything you need to do most things, and then you can come up with everything else after that. And the setting is generally pretty clean. I don't want a setting that is inherently dark most of the time. If the campaign does get very dark, that's fine, but I don't want necessarily the world to always feel dark every time, always, because that's the way the game is. I intend to have fun with it, not just run around, look at horror.
I know I tend to be a fan of the Forgotten Realms for that reason. Balikod also asks, how do you keep players from being broken?
I'm going to answer the question I believe he asked, but first I'm going to ask the question he literally asked. And I'm a DM. Usually my intent is to break the characters, usually in creative ways, over somebody else's knee, whatever. But in terms of actually preventing them from going crazy with the rules and doing really crazy powerful things, I most of the time don't. My players are very good. I generally prefer role-playing to things. There is combat in my games, because it's kind of something you expect in D&D. At some point you'll get in a fight. But I give pretty decent role-play for other things going on. Or I give pretty decent experience. I think I might have said role-play instead. I actually usually like my players to be a bit powerful for their levels. I tend to go with high rolled stats, meaning they roll 5 die and then drop the 2 lowest, which gives them really powerful stats most of the time. And this means that I can throw really crazy things at them, and they'll usually survive it. And this can be things... Usually. And this can be things CR levels above what they should be able to handle, and they'll still survive it if they're at least a little creative. And I very much encourage creativity and creative play with my players. I've had players that would try and really play with the rules and make them as powerful as possible. And I tend to turn around and stab these guys in interesting ways and make them have interesting problems because of what they're trying to do. And I try to make things backfire in the game. And they get frustrated with me, but it's not quite as frustrating as they get. Do I reward players for good role play, and how? Yes, I generally reward players for good role play in a couple different ways. Again, I like to encourage creative play. I like to encourage role play. I really like to encourage my players playing as their characters, not as themselves. I very much frown upon meta play and meta information. If the player knows something that the character doesn't, and they act upon the player knowledge, then I tend to go, hey, what are you doing? You can't do that. As for how I actually reward these things, it varies depending on the case. One of the obvious things is if they're role-playing very well, like if they're playing in their character and they're saying things as their character, and their character does backstory or starts coming up with things, then I tend to give them role-play experience points. Other things are if they're creative in what they're doing, like they're role-playing something and it gives them an edge, then I'll actually let them have that edge. I'll tweak the rules, or I'll play with whatever. If they come up with creative solutions for problems, then I tend to very much let that work, or try to go out of my way to try and fix that so it'll work right. For instance, the story I told last time with one of the characters getting turned to stone, but due to some properties he has, he kept moving. He's a cleric, and at some point decided, you know what? he casts Dimension Door, I think it was, and drops himself on the Beholder.
Squishy.
Squishy. I was like, all right, that's really clever. That's fun. So we went with that, and it was a really, really fun fight because it was really challenging for them, and then they really ended it with a flourish. You know, it's great flair to kill a Beholder by dropping one of your statue companions on him. So it was fun, and I kind of went, okay, well, figuring out how you're dropping on him, whatever, and I went through different things. Okay, you actually take no damage in the end because of the damage reduction from being a statue, and going through the Beholder slowed you down enough that you were fine. So I did calculate these numbers. I didn't have to actually fudge them. I came up with the system for that. The biggest reward I think I do for role play and creative play is I let them do it. One of my main rules as a DM is I try not to tell my players no. I won't set the rule that I won't tell my players, no, you can't do that, because there are some things you just can't do. But if they come up with something they want to try and do, instead of just going no, I go, okay, how? How are we going to make that work? How do you want to do that? So I try to have very free play and let things work. Yeah. Okay, so if anybody has anything else, same person can ask a question again too. That's fine. Then I'm happy to answer that. But for this, I think that's probably all I'll work on for the moment. I'll probably need to go back to the drawing board and figure out how else I want to handle this system now, since the prototype doesn't work. That's okay. It's kind of what I expected of it. This is not the first time I've written this system, so it's one of the things about prototypes. So yeah, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to head off now, and I wish you all a good day, evening, morning, whatever you got. Adios.
If you've not done so already, please press the follow button up above the screen to follow XComp so that you can know when he's streaming again.